They're trying to rescue their animals. Can you imagine just, oh my goodness, these embers flying everywhere. Hi there, how many more horses do you have?
We have a couple we just let loose over there. We're trying to get as many as we can out. Yeah.
Are any homes out there on fire?
Honestly, I did not pay attention. I just drove straight to the barn to get my horses out and get the rest of these guys out. We're not just gonna let them burn.
Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, with the sky dyed a fiery orange and the smell of smoke invading every corner of your home. In moments, tranquility gives way to chaos, and you need to run away, leaving behind everything you spent a lifetime building. This was the reality for thousands of people in Southern California, in a scenario that seems taken from the pages of an apocalyptic book. Stately mansions and humble homes became equal in the face of the destructive force of fire, reminding us, once again, how small we are in the face of nature's fury. But what makes this story even more disturbing is that it's not just a natural disaster. It's a call to see truths we'd rather ignore. While the flames devoured entire neighborhoods, social inequalities, lack of preparation, and human vulnerability were mercilessly exposed. This is an invitation to reflect on what really matters. Are we ready to face the lessons that these events try to teach us? Or will we remain trapped in the illusion that we are in control? If you've ever felt like the world is moving towards something bigger, something scary, perhaps inevitable, this is the time to pay attention. The fire that consumed the Pacific Palisades and surrounding areas was more than a weather phenomenon. It was a sign that changes that once seemed distant are now knocking on our door, asking to be recognized. And while many choose to turn a blind eye, others are already searching for answers. After all, when everything seems to be falling apart, that's when the opportunity arises to rebuild something stronger. The wildfires in Los Angeles in 2025 spared no one. More than 30,000 people, of all ages and social classes, were forced to leave their homes in a hurry. Imagine having just minutes to decide what to take: the family photo on the wall or the notebook with your documents. In this desperate race against the fire, many didn't even have time to think, fleeing with what they had in their hands. The streets of renowned neighborhoods like Pacific Palisades, once symbols of prosperity, were filled with an almost cinematic setting, but this time, there were no scripts, just chaos and smoke. As the flames advanced mercilessly, families that previously boasted security and stability found themselves taking refuge within the city itself. Some sought shelter in makeshift gyms, where luxury gave way to mattresses on the floor and queues for a plate of hot food. Others, less fortunate, ended up sleeping in cars or at the mercy of a system that was already overloaded. The images circulating on social media showed not only destruction, but also the fragility of modern life. Mansions reduced to ashes, luxury cars abandoned on the sides of the road. The devastation was not restricted to material goods. Pets, for many like family members, were left behind in the despair. It was common to hear emotional reports from people who, crying, tried to convince the authorities to let them return to get their dogs, cats, or even horses. And it wasn't just a matter of feelings. Losing a pet is like losing a piece of your soul. The bond between humans and animals was evident in every tear. For some, the tragedy became a revelation. That idea that disasters only happened to others was obliterated by the force of the flame. Pacific Palisades, with its million-dollar homes, seemed immune to tragedies. But in a matter of hours, the fire belied this false sense of invulnerability. It's curious how nature doesn't make distinctions. Whether you are rich or poor, when disaster arrives, it takes the same toll on everyone. Ultimately, this forces a painful but necessary reflection on what really matters when everything can disappear from one moment to the next. Still, there is something that remains: the human spirit. In the midst of tragedy, unlikely heroes emerged. Neighbors who barely greeted each other on the street now shared bottles of water and offered rides to those who needed to escape. Ordinary people who had never faced anything like this discovered a strength in themselves that they may never have known existed. These stories, often forgotten in mainstream news, are powerful reminders that even in the darkest times, light can prevail. Antes de seguirmos adiante, Não se esqueça de se inscrever no canal e compartilhar este vídeo. Todos os dias trazemos novos conteúdos sobre profecias e os acontecimentos proféticos que estão se desenrolando ao nosso redor. The Santa Ana winds, so well known to Californians, showed their devastating force. Although common at this time of year, this time they combined with the heat and drought to create the perfect scenario for the tragedy. Hot, incessant puffs, which might go unnoticed on an ordinary day, became the fire's cruel allies, spreading the flames like an artist spreading paint on a canvas. With each burst, firefighters saw the work of hours being undone in seconds. And what seemed controlled soon turned into a new fire. The role of the winds was more perverse than just fueling the flames. It also spread sparks for miles, turning safe spots into new danger zones. Imagine the scene, a family hastily evacuating, believing they are out of danger, only to discover that the fire has reached them in a completely unexpected location. This unpredictability made the rescue operation even more complicated, putting lives at risk even in areas considered safe. Many residents, without understanding the dynamics of the winds, underestimated the danger and ended up surrounded by flame. With the flames constantly moving, authorities were forced to take extreme measures. Abandoned vehicles, left by panicked drivers on the streets, have become dangerous obstacles. Removing these cars was essential so that the fire trucks could get through, but it was not an easy job. As the winds whistled, teams had to risk their lives to clear blocked roads. It was a game of patience and courage, where every second lost could mean more homes destroyed, or worse, lives lost. The effort to contain the fires required more than material resources, required strategy. It was almost like a chess game with nature, predicting the next movement of the winds, positioning teams intelligently and, at the same time, protecting those who were still in the affected area. Firefighters from different cities were mobilized, forming a gigantic task force. Still, they faced an unfair. The Santa Ana winds never tire, they have no limits, and they seemed determined to remind everyone who is really in charge. The episode also brought to light an alarming question. How prepared are we to deal with the force of nature? The winds, which are already known for their unpredictability, made it clear that emergency plans need to be rethought. It is not enough to just have robust infrastructure. We need to educate people about the real risk. Knowing how to act when the winds change direction, having a clear evacuation plan and remaining calm are just some of the lessons this tragedy left. But even in the midst of the chaos, the first lessons were already emerging on how to prevent something like this from happening again. The mobilization of firefighters was nothing short of impressive. With sirens echoing everywhere, teams emerged as true heroes to face an enemy that gives no quarter. But contrary to what many imagine, fighting fires of such magnitude is not just a matter of strength and courage. It is a meticulously planned operation, where each decision can mean saving a house or losing an entire neighborhood. Even so, human vulnerability in the face of nature became evident with each new flame that emerged. Local resources have been stretched to the limit. Imagine a small team of firefighters, used to dealing with everyday incidents, suddenly facing something so colossal it seemed straight out of a movie. Coordination between states was essential, with reinforcements arriving from neighboring regions, but even so, there was no way to keep up with the frantic pace of the fire. There was a battle not only against the flames but also against time, as every minute lost meant a new house was swallowed up. The emergency response also revealed stories of sacrifice and bravery that deserve to be highlighted. In one case, a firefighter who had already finished his shift returned to rescue a family who was trapped in the flames. Without thinking twice, he entered a scenario of total chaos and managed to get everyone out safely. Stories like this, which often go unnoticed, are reminders of how humanity can shine even in the darkest of times. This is the kind of example that inspires and awakens the best in all of us. But not everything was heroic. The tragedy also exposed flaws that need to be addressed. Overcrowded shelters, ineffective communication systems, and a widespread lack of up-to-date equipment showed that although the response was quick, there is much room for improvement. It's like trying to fight a fire with buckets of water. No matter how good the intention is, without the right resources, the impact will always be limited. The disaster brought a clear warning. we cannot continue treating nature as something we can always control. Despite the difficulties, the unity of the community was a point of hope. Residents who had never spoken to each other came together to support firefighters, organize donations, and even offer shelter to strangers. Amidst the destruction, bonds of solidarity emerged that proved that although we are vulnerable, our strength lies in our ability to help each other. And perhaps, in times like these, this is the greatest lesson. That together, we can face even the most devastating storms or, in this case, the fiercest fires. The Los Angeles fires were not just a physical tragedy, but also a living metaphor for the fragility of the modern world. In just a few hours, everything that seemed solid, imposing mansions, luxurious neighborhoods, and even entire security systems collapsed like a house of cards. It's almost impossible not to reflect on how we build our trust in things that, at their core, are temporary. The fire came as a cruel reminder that the control we think we have is actually an illusion. Social divisions have become more visible than ever during the crisis. While some managed to escape in luxury SUVs, others, in simpler neighborhoods, face difficulties finding transportation or even accessing shelters. This disparity, so common in times of peace, becomes even more striking in times of catastrophe. However, paradoxically, it was also these moments that brought people from different social classes together, showing that, deep down, we are all in the same boat when nature decides to take its toll. These events also raised profound questions about what it really means to live in community. It's not just about infrastructure or material goods, but about a sense of shared responsibility. When the flames threatened to destroy everything, people turned to each other, not as rich or poor, but as human beings. It is in these moments that one realizes the importance of values, such as compassion and solidarity, which, however fragile they may seem, have the power to sustain a society in collapse. However, amidst the destruction, seeds of hope emerge. Volunteer movements, donation campaigns, and even small gestures like offering a glass of water to a stranger have shown that despite our failings, there is still goodness in the world. It's comforting to think that, in the midst of chaos, there are always people willing to do good. This leads us to an important question. What can we learn from all this? Perhaps it is the need to rethink our priorities and invest more in what unites rather than what divides. Yet restoration is not just physical, it is also emotional and spiritual. The event forces a pause, a collective reflection on the life we lead and the values that really matter. It's curious how often we only realize what's essential when we've lost. Perhaps the real work of reconstruction is not just putting up walls but building a stronger sense of purpose, something that guides us even in moments when all seems lost. Faced with the ashes left by the fires in California, the question that keeps echoing is, what are we going to do with the lessons that this disaster left us? The destruction was evident, but it also brought to light truths that were hidden beneath the veil of everyday life. Have you ever stopped to think about how you would act if you were in these people's shoes? Are we ready to face such extreme situations? Or do we continue to be stuck with the idea that tragedies only happen to others? Maybe it's time to rethink your priorities. What really matters when everything around you can disappear? And start with small actions, like preparing for emergencies or seeking to connect more with your community. These measures not only increase your resilience, but also create a sense of purpose that can transform lives, yours and those around you. Don't wait for the next disaster to start taking action. And speaking of taking action, the time to build a stronger future begins now. What can you do today to protect your tomorrow? Whether studying sustainability, supporting disaster response organizations, or even changing habits that positively impact the environment, remember, you have more power than you realize. Every choice, no matter how small it may seem, is a step towards a world better prepared for what is. Finally, think about all the stories you've read here. Every person, every gesture of solidarity, every sacrifice. These narratives are reminders that, even in the midst of chaos, humanity is capable of extraordinary things. Now it's your turn to be part of this change. How about starting by making a commitment to be more prepared and engaged? After all, the future depends on choices made in the present. If you want to continue learning and preparing to face the world's challenges, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, we explore the most pressing issues of our time and show how you can make a difference. Don't leave for later what can transform your life now. We are on this journey together and it is just beginning.